Es un honor para mí contribuir algo a este trabajo sobre la paz, que es uno de los retos principales para la humanidad de hoy. No necesito comentar eso, ¿no? Es la escalación de las armas, ¿no? Y el otro, ¿no? Es una cosa muy seria. Because, and I'll speak English anyway in my talk, because the threats to peace are manifold. And one of the greatest challenges for humanity is the quest for peace. Well, my contribution. I would like to contribute the following. As Roberto said, you worked with the icosahedra, and you learned that this is quite an optimal way of organizing large group work, groups that go beyond the face-to-face teams. And so I would like to talk about this question of optimality and look at this structural concept of teams integrity and other similar ones and check if they really are optimal. That's the question. Colloquially and with our experience, we say, well, this has worked. We have 500 applications and it has worked. But as you know, underpinning or corroborating a hypothesis or an assumption continually does not yet prove that it's right. And so I'll try to go a little bit beyond. Let's see. Well, in the 90s, biologists wanted to learn from living organisms. And you know, system theory is also a term we are using here. The first tenet of system theory is that certain invariant structures can be met in the most different realms of reality, the most different domains of reality. We meet the same structures. And in other words, that means we can learn a lot from nature for the organization of social systems. So these biologists, they wanted to know more about how living organisms are organized. And their first questions naturally was, what is an optimal structure? Well, the answer is straightforward. You say, the structure of an optimal organization. So the next question comes, so which organisms are optimal? And what's the answer? The answer is, if you are in the tradition of evolutionary theory, your answer will be, well, the optimal organizations are those that are around. The others already have died out. So what they could do, these biologists, they analyzed organisms that are there. Basically, they took mammals from mouse, rat, dog, cow, horse, and so on. And they measured the organization of these organisms. And what they found is, they found that living organisms follow a law of organization that is grounded in a fractal structure. Now, those of you who are not mathematicians are perhaps not all, many of you are not familiar with the concept of fractality. Let's look at it this way. A zero-dimensional structure is what? A dot. A dot is 0 dimensions. 1 dimension is a line. 2 dimensions, a surface. So, for example, a square. In 3 dimensions, a cube. Yeah, a cube. So, now, these are whole numbers in the exponent, 0, 1, 2, 3. And I'm talking here about fractal structure, and a fractal is characterized by the fact that it has an exponent of a fraction, una fracción, en el exponente, a fraction. And so they measured what these organisms were about. For example, here we have an organism of a rabbit, for example. It's the arteries in the kidney of a rabbit. And you see, we have this structure. We have big arteries, and then they go out and they become smaller, 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 and so on. Now, the fascinating thing is that we all, these organisms and us humans, we are supplied with all nutrients we need out till the last fiber of our organism. And we are supplied by a fractal structure. If it were a two-dimensional structure, it couldn't be because it's not physical. It doesn't have any content. If it would be three-dimensional, we would be a pot of blood. And you would have to stir it. And you would need a lot of energy. And the fascinating thing about these organisms is that they get all these nutrients. This blood is pumped with very low energy of our heart. It's pumped everywhere in our organism. On very low need of energy with a laminar flow, flucholaminar. So let's look at this a little more. Cernetz and colleagues, they came up with this law of metabolism reduction, and it shows over the body volume in liters from very small to very large. A cow, for example, can have up to 1,000 liters of body volume. And then they compared, they looked at the passage, at the trajectory of throughput in joule per second as the basic throughput of joule per second. And you see that the throughput clearly from a mouse to a rat to a dog to a person to an individual to a cow goes up this way. On the contrary, if we look at the specific throughput in joule per second and liter, so that would be evened out now, normalized, let's say, over the volume, we would get a slope downward. So the organisms become ever more intelligent in processing the blood. Now, I will not confront you with all the calculations which were made, but what, rather with a big algorithm, the metabolic activity of a living organism, as they found, follows a law of power. This law of power was derived from empirical evidence, as I just showed you. And so, the metabolic activity here is equal to the length of the organism to the power of the fractal dimensionality. And their hypothesis was, or their, yes, they approached this and they say, well, the fractal dimensionality is somewhere between 2.2 and 2.3. And it is the fractal dimensionality of an optimal organization, of an optimal living organism. Because it's there, because it survives in this turbulent environment. And what they found to be exact, they found that the law of power is m is L to the power of 2.22. So the 2.22 is something like the golden, Roberto, the golden Schnitt, the golden...
I talked to them.
Yeah.
La proporción áurea.
Áurea, es algo como la proporción áurea. 2.22. Now let's see. I read this. And I was sitting on a mountain cottage, and I thought, this is fascinating. And I said, well, if system theory is worth anything, this should also be relevant for organizations. And so I started making calculations and so on, and it was not so easy, because how should you go about? How should you say optimal organization? Should you compare two organizations and one is better organized and one worse? well, that's a very expensive experiment and all that. So I said, no, I do something different. I said, I'll take an organization structure which is considered widely as optimal. And that is the icosahedral space of team's integrity, where we know, well, it's of all these large group concepts. We have many large group concepts, open space and what all these names are. And I have studied all of them, and we have 2 books in our library, only large group concepts. Strategy workshop and scenario sequences and all that. And I must say, my preference for team's integrity is that it is better theoretically underpinned, theoretically. It has a better theoretical basis than all the other ones. Now, this is one aspect, but the second aspect is that a wide empirical body of results is available, and that's about over 500 applications, and I don't know of any flop. I don't know of any real flop of the applications. Does anyone know? I would always be keen to learn one that was a flop. Roberto? No? So, so my hypothesis then was, I said, well, an optimally conceived organization shows a dimensionality of 2.2 until 2.3. Yeah? Just equal as the biologists had done. And my point was just that you can apply it to social systems like organizations. You know, people have gone about to solve this problem of optimal structure by many ways, and the classical one is a hierarchy. They tried it with matrix. They tried it with tensors. Several dimensions. Now, there was no theory under that. You know, there's very little theory under that, and we have analyzed all of these structures in terms of cybernetics and system theory, and I could refute, for example, the matrix organization. I could refute it on the grounds of complexity theory, but I will not do it here. Then we have others. We have the network organizations, and we see that we can learn from nature because this is a network of proteins or a network by which we can predict infectious diseases in a temporal network. I will show also another one where we can learn from. This is also from nature. It's a physiological network from a mucosa in the intestines. So actually the man from whom this analysis comes is a medical doctor and a bio-cybernetician, Frederick Wester, and he showed this polarity here between 2 kinds of organization. Here, these clusters, and here, everything connected to everything. Which one is the more robust? The more robust structure. The one to the right? One hypothesis? Contrary hypothesis? No? Well, I'll show you. The problem to the right, this looks quite good, you know. And we think, well, the phone, for example. Yeah? The phone, we have a small network. If the network is only one, only my phone, so I'll call myself and it's going to be occupied. Now, with every second, third, and so on phones, the system gets more value. But the fact is that not everybody is connected to everybody in the sense that they do it, that they act this way, but also the people who use the phone, they organize themselves. And they organize themselves rather the way we have it here. You talk to certain people and to others you don't. If everyone would talk to every other, we would follow entropy and the death of heat. So if I say what are the organic structures we are representing here with these two structures, we have here a mucosa which is healthy, and we have here a mucosa which has a tumor, cancer. So we can learn some things for that. And also if you take the structures which we learn from cybernetics, like the viable systems and so on, they are organized in this sense and not in this sense. So we have more networks here, the internet as a network, or here from our institute where we analyze the network of an ecosystem, e-mobility. And now the question is, what is optimal here? What is optimal here? And I must say, I couldn't give you a good answer about that, but I'll be able to do it now. With the icosahedral structure for Team's integrity, you know this diagram, and you also know the second, and you know that, have you seen this graph? No? Yeah, but you know how integration works because you have done it yourself now in this week. And so it's very amazing to see that after one iteration of all the information which is in the heads of all the participants of the 30, about 60% is in every head already. And with two, already all of the information available in the system will be in the heads. And usually we do three iterations. 91% of the information is in all the heads. And this occurs due to the reverberation of the same people discussing around a big topic, dedicating themselves alternately to partial aspects of that overall theme, and discussing it with the others of these 30 in changing constellations. And that's the power, the reverberation, which leads to this incredible increase of information content of the info set. Now, I'm testing my hypothesis, and this is pretty straightforward now. The test of the hypothesis the calculus of dimensionality. I made this up the following way. Ri is the total set of relationships of the members of the info set, not potential but actual. And this is composed of the relationships at the team level and at the relationships of the observers. You know the distinction, the team level is the players and the critics, and then there's the third category, which are the observers. So, what you find here, simple formulas actually, you have, first of all, you have a number of teams. I is the number of teams from 1 to 12 normally. M is the relationships. That's a very fundamental, actually, equation which we use to determine variety, a basic variety equation. The M is the relationship between each pair of agents here, and N is the number of members in a team. So I count 10, not 5, because I count the players and the critics. So basically that's it. Yes, I have it here actually, the players and the critics. Is the N of the participants of a team. Now there's an additional, the second component of the formula, it's the complementary relationships of the observers. And here again, I have teams, 12 teams, but I'm calculating now only the observers, and P is the number of observers. So if I have 20 in the teams, I have 10 observers left. And now, the observers, what do they do? And it was quite necessary to have a lot of experience with the integrations, because how do I calculate? How many observers are there? How many are active? What do they do? Do they change groups and all that? And so I tried to capture all that. And well, I'm very much at the beginning of Teams Integrity. I helped Stafford Beer in elaborating the methodology at an advanced level, but I helped him, and we did the first syntegrations, 2 syntegrations. One was in Manchester and the other one in St. Gallen at my university with my students. So it was not too difficult to calibrate this, and I said, well, F is the percentage of those observers who do something actively, who go to the groups and observe them. Well, there may be others active as well. They may have a drink with someone else or from a different group and do some lateral bargaining or information taking and giving. So this is included here. I took account of that. And the other aspect is S here, the end. That's the fraction of observers who do not only go to one team, but they accompany both teams that are going on. Switch teams. And that's already quite demanding, and not everybody does it, but some do it. And actually I came up with some assumptions here, and the assumptions are as follows. M is 2, that's the number of relationships between two agents. That means 2 means relationship in each direction. F, that was the percentage of active observers. I started off with 0.5, a half. Yeah. The integration is pretty demanding, so you do a lot of work, and often you are just tired. You don't want to do anything. Yeah. So I put in there. Did you feel that too? Here? Yes. Well, amazing. Yeah. I believe you absolutely. And also, if this 0.5 should not be quite what is the case in real life, I will show you afterwards. I did some sensitivity analysis, and will capture that, this probability of variation. And S 1/3, that's the ones who are active and switch teams as well. So, and this is the number that came out, 1,880. And so the next step was to calculate. And the calculation is pretty easy. It is that this number, 1,880, the total number of all relationships, is the same as the number of members in the info set to the power of x. And x is the fractal dimension we are looking for. And so I was sitting there in this cabana in the mountains, the cottage in the mountains, and then I had these numbers, you know, and I had no calculator with me. I just had 1,880, and that n is 30. And so I called my son and said, take out the calculator and tell me I have 30 to the basis, and I have 1,880 as a result. So what's the exponent? And the exponent he gave me, we would solve it with a logarithm here. You see? Logarithm R1 is x times logarithm n, and so logarithm n divided by is x. And he gave me the number 2.216. I almost fell over, you know, because this is the same number as I had in biology, you know, 2.22. So it's just a few thousandths away from the ideal. And so, well, it was quite interesting to get this result. And I said, well, let's look at this and do some sensitivity analysis. Let's see. Yeah, well, the dimensionality of Teams integrity amounts to 2.21658. And we can say, we can actually formulate a theorem for optimal organizations and say an optimal organization has a fractal dimensionality of 2.22. approximately. And the sensitivity analysis, I'm not sure if you can read all this, but I'll read it for you. Well, we have here all the numbers that are relevant, number of relationships, number of players, and so on and so on. Now, we tested the following scenarios. The first one, that's an important one. It's often discussed. What if the teams are not complete? And I took a pretty extreme case. I said, well, teams not complete. Instead of 5 players and 5 critics, I take 3 players and 3 critics. And so I calculated that through, and I came to a deviation of less than 1%. That's nothing. That's very low. Then another one is, what if we don't have 12 teams? You say, well, what if we only have people for 11 teams or something like that? And so I also calculated this, and I have here 9 teams only. And the deviation was 3%, very small. I called it medium, but yeah, because everything is small here. So this was medium, of small to very small. And then we had the non-communicators. I said the M is not 2, but it's only 1.5. See here? So they don't talk to each other, That exists. They prefer to not talk, And there's also not a great deal. That's amazing, isn't it? And finally, I had 2 extremes. One is the workaholics. There are those people who were the observers, They switch all the time and they observe all the time. So I have much bigger numbers here. Instead of a half, I have 0.8, and instead of 0.3, I have 0.8. And here, well, 5% higher. This is the biggest deviation here, actually. But it's no great deal. And then I had the lazy bones. The lazy bones are the other way around. These are those who don't, no quiere nada, no quiere nada, sentados, etc. And so there are just very few who go as observers and very few who share the teams. So you see that it's a pretty robust thing. And I always I could say here, well, yes, this is a structure which is so robust that it's difficult for anything to go wrong. Yeah? It's really very robust. And I hope you share this view, Roberto, after this week. Yeah, you do? Okay. So that's also, it's a confirmation. It's a confirmation. And well, I think I have shown you the most important things here are just the implications. The theorem, I said it, and the relevance for peace construction seems to be very big, because peace construction is a game between a lot of agents, between interest groups, with people, interests, values, and different resources, and all of that in a big movement of communication. And so a protocol that is grounded in this structure that optimizes the communication process. Yes, we have proposed it, and I think with this formal proof here, I have underpinned it. Or I have, yes, it's a formal proof actually. That's more than just taking a few cases more. Just see the applications. I don't know if you have seen this list. Ever seen it? Well, you just take a look on all the kinds of applications we have seen over these 20 years in which this protocol exists. By the way, ecological issues. We had a disintegration of Gorgona here in Colombia, in Gorgona in 2003, was that, Roberto? I think 2003. 1997. Wow. Oh, so it's much before that. Yes. And there was a declaration of Gorgona and so on, you know. And so an important thing. You don't know much about it today, but you know, many consequences are not that they lead to, I don't know, to build the EIV Turm or something, you know, or to lead to a very specific, huge investment into this issue or whatever. Many of the consequences, they are distributed, they are indirect and so on. Yeah? So there were some follow-up activities, but I think it was a very valuable thing because it gathered people of the very different backgrounds. There were students, there was a minister, there were experts, there were people from the Contraloría General de la República and so on. Another one I would like to, so the others are straightforward, you know, it's very good for strategy, organization development, community planning, town planning, also at the town level. We have had a few or a skiing area in Italy, for example. So I would like to call your attention to this one. It was once used for the preparation of peace talks between Israelis and Palestinians. Mr. Solomon, who later worked for Malik, Mr. Solomon was a facilitator, the director there, and this was back in the 90s, you know. And the awful thing was that shortly after this, Begin, the prime minister of Israel, was murdered. And so it all broke up, you know. All this peace talk broke up. That was a very sad thing. But I think we should try more to use this organizational arrangement in peace negotiations, talks, and so on. Well, science often tells us, the scientists tell us, we are destroying the earth, you know, and we often get this answer. I'll read it for you. Could you kindly rephrase that in equivocal, inaccurate, vague, self-serving, and roundabout terms that we can all understand? Yeah? This destructive response is coming. And I believe that this cannot come out as an outcome of its integration due to its self-organizing, reflective, and self-correcting properties. Therefore, it is worth trying this structure in peace construction processes for a more dialogic and ultimately peaceful world. Thank you.